It's time for ROTD Weekend. Deciding what to make for dinner is still the biggest struggle in my cooking life. And I know that's insane because that's essentially what I do for a living with the podcast and the recipes I'm coming up with. But it's not just about what do I feel like cooking? You know this. I'm not saying anything you haven't heard before. The involvement, what's involved in choosing what to make on a given day, or if you're doing a whole meal plan, it's okay, what do we have in the fridge that needs to be used up? What do we have in the freezer? What do we have in the pantry? What did we have to eat yesterday? I want something different, a different kind of protein or a different kind of vegetable, or, not the same carbohydrate again. So you're trying to decide what to make based on what you have already and isn't too similar to what you just had. And then you're also taking into account what's going on today. Do we have, band practice after school? Are there appointments? Is it a crunch time day where I'm really busy, or do I have more time? How exhausted am I? Regardless of how much time do I have, how much energy do I have? And that's not even asking myself, what do I feel like eating tonight? Right? And then in the what do I feel like eating tonight, there's also that I should make something healthy, but I'm craving something a little indulgent, and trying to go between those things, where on the spectrum do I feel like being today? And also, what do I feel like eating today? And then will my kids and Marty like the thing that I'm feeling like eating today? So yeah, what plays out in my head in, sometimes even just a few seconds or a minute in that what should I make for dinner tonight? Or what should I put on my meal plan for this week? The thoughts that go through our minds when we're doing that, and how intricate they are in a strange way. You're just balancing so many different things. And so it's no wonder when we just have no idea at the end of that. It's just at a loss. So I hear you. I am there with you. I totally feel that way also. I think we probably all have different challenges in this, but it's just fascinating really that even me, I do this for work, and I have a million recipes and recipe ideas and skills and techniques and all of the stuff at my fingertips, and it's still a struggle, right? So what I want to say today about this, beyond just saying I know that it's not as simple as what should we have for dinner tonight? It's much deeper and bigger than that. I also want to say that I don't think there's just one solution to this problem. And I don't mean that I think everybody's solution is different or it's different for each person. I mean, it can change in one home or one person's mind over time. And I actually, the first podcast that I started, which this kind of became an extension of, if you've been listening that long, thank you. It was TMI, Time Management Insider, for time management inside the home. That podcast does not exist anymore. But when I was doing that, I loved talking to people, either people in the culinary industry or just my friends, or if I had a friend of a friend who seemed to be doing something cool, I would have them on the show. And what I found was that I would learn a new little tip or technique from somebody or a new service or something, and then I would use it for a little while, and it helped for a little while. Sometimes I got bored of it. So for instance, I talked to somebody who did a lot of the HelloFresh meal kit kind of things, and she kind of convinced me to try it because I hadn't been that interested in trying it. And we did it for a couple of months, 1 or 2 meals a week. A little pricey. There's all those pros and cons, et cetera, et cetera. But it was fun, and it did solve things for a little while, I talked to someone else who kept a calendar with all of whatever they made for dinner on this calendar, and then would, when they were looking for ideas, go back and flip through that calendar and could just be instantly inspired by things that had already fit their family on other occasions. So I did that for a little while. I stopped keeping the calendar at some point. But you see what I mean? There's these different things, and they can help for a little while, and they don't have to be a lifelong solution that works forever. It can be the thing that helps you out for the next few weeks. And so today I'm going to tell you the thing that I've been doing the last couple of weeks that I'm doing again this week that might help me for the next couple of weeks and might help you for a couple of weeks. So what I've been doing is when I first sit down to do my meal plan, which is often on Friday because that's when the kids come back to my place from their dads. So that'll be like when I'm thinking ahead to the next like 4 or 5 days. And what I've been doing is writing down, not the days of the week. I've stopped doing that. I just do numbers. So I know like how many meals I need because sometimes we end up switching, it doesn't end up being exactly to plan. So I'll just write down 4 numbers and then next to them, I write 1 pot pasta. Next to one of the numbers, I write skillet dinner. Next to say number 2, I write down bowl next to number 4, and I write down soup next to number 5. And that has kind of like narrowed things down really far. Like I do one of those 1 pot pastas. I will link to the like main formula for that for you, but everything is cooked in the pot. The pasta's cooked in the sauce. Really, really easy and convenient. So I'll do one of those and then I will turn that into a soup later in the week. And then one of the dinners is a skillet dinner and one of the dinner is like a grain or rice bowl. And then once I've put down those 4 with those like dinner types next to them, I do have to go in and like fill in the blanks about what that's going to be. Is it going to be a chicken and rice skillet with bell peppers? Is it going to be a like Tex-Mex 1 pot pasta? Is it going to be a salmon Asian kind of bowl? So there's still like some decision making to do, but I've already kind of like laid out different things that are varieties. The pasta, the skillet is usually rice or potatoes or sometimes orzo, or I'll do like a farro type grain, something like that. But like the kind of meal that it is already laid out. And then I just need to like write in the words, chicken or beef or like different vegetables or, do a quick search on my site for like skillet and see what shows up. But like the framework is already there, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's been helping me a lot. I guess it's kind of like, I feel like it's helping me with my meal planning writer's block. When you have writer's block and you're just like staring at the screen, I feel like I have this little notebook that I do my meal planning in, and I've written down, like if I'm doing days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, like I said, and I just stare at it. I'm just looking at it like, oh, what am I writing down? So at least I've started writing, 1 pot pasta, skillet, bowl, soup. And that like unlocks something. And then I can start kind of writing in other things. I'll put chicken next to number 1 with the 1 pot pasta, and I'll put ground beef next to the skillet, and I'll put, salmon next to the bowl, like I said. And it just kind of like frees that up and makes it a little bit easier. So that is what I have been trying. I do not expect it to last forever, but it has been working for a couple of weeks. And if you want to give it a try, try it out and let me know what you think. You can email me at cookthestory@gmail.com and let me know what you're doing and what's been working for you. And if you like this idea, you can tell me that as well. And I will say that as you are trying something like this, a framework meal plan, I know that my guest today has some great ideas that will help you out as well. I am speaking with Jessica Formicola of Savory Experiments, and she has some really great ideas for adding a little pizzazz to your meals. So if you used my little like meal planning framework and then filled in some of the other things, the proteins, the vegetables, you could add a little bit of Jessica's pizzazz to the top of that or to the presentation of that and make the meals more special. You are going to love hearing from Jessica. She has an amazing cookbook, Beef It Up. She's also a food judge on Hearst Media's Emmy-nominated Plate It Baltimore. She's a regular on morning news shows and has been featured like all over the place, but you can find her at savoryexperiments.com. Here is my conversation with Jessica. Hey, Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hi, Christine.
It is so great to be talking with you again, especially because I know that you're working on a cookbook. I know you can't tell us everything about it, but can you give us a little hint?
Yes, it's the second cookbook, so I'm really excited about that. I enjoyed the process of the first one, Beef It Up. It was a lot of fun, but I wanted to do something a little bit broader and based on the 5S philosophy that we use on the website. It's basically taking everyday meals and being able to elevate them to I would say gourmet, but a restaurant quality level. So we took a look at all of these different restaurant menus and we're like, what really takes things up a notch? What's the thing that we're doing differently in a restaurant than we're doing at home? Because we have all these great home cooks and the flavors are on point. So the things we really came down to all oddly ended up starting with S's. So we've got salt, seasonings, sauces, swaps, and senses, like as in our 5 senses. So what we really are trying to do is give home cooks the confidence to be able to take a recipe that they love or a recipe from a blogger like you or me and customize it, make it their own, and also elevate it by thinking about these 5 things. And you don't have to use all 5 of them for every single recipe. But my example always is like you could have a piece of salmon, asparagus, and mashed potatoes, right?
Mhm.
And at home, we'd make all 3 of those things and we'd put them on a plate. Like, here's the asparagus, here's the mashed potatoes, here's the salmon, and they'd kind of like a cafeteria tray style.
Mhm.
Now, if we're going to see that same thing at a restaurant, it might be the 3 basic elements, but maybe the chef has put the mashed potatoes on the bottom and then 3 spears of asparagus on top of the mashed potatoes and then the salmon fillet on top. And that's usually topped with some sort of a sauce. I challenge anybody to look at a restaurant menu and not see a sauce accompanying
Mhm.
whatever it is they're
Mhm.
ordering, whether it's an appetizer or a dessert. It always has a sauce.
True. Yeah.
And then proper seasoning and salt. And I feel like home cooks are always scared to properly salt things because we're all worried about sodium, obviously. But there are
Mhm.
ways to salt and season things properly without overdoing it on the sodium level, depending on what kind of salt we use. And that's something we're also trying to teach our readers is the difference between like a coarse kosher salt versus an iodized salt versus a sea salt versus finishing salt versus cooking salt. When to salt? Is it better to do it before or after? So all of these elements are things we're going to be talking about in the new book. It is going to be all about entrees. The
Mhm.
hope is that after entrees, we'll be talking all about side dishes or appetizers, and we'll be making this into a series and really helping people kind of come out of their home cooking shell and reframe it from I have to cook to I want to cook to this is quality time spent with my family in the kitchen, at the dinner table with my family, teaching my kids how to cook, which is what we do at home. And we do that by having them hands-on and helping us. So it's been a labor of love. I'm really excited about it. We're hoping to have it out end of September. And my manuscript is due at the end of this week. So it all hinges on me now.
Yeah, oh, that's so exciting. Congratulations. And okay, so I have questions and you don't have to tell me the whole book, but you were saying about salting and seasoning correctly. So what is something that you see home cooks doing? I don't want to say wrong, but like doing that you would say is not the best way to do it, especially if they're trying to reduce sodium but still have the salt and the seasoning. What are they doing wrong? What should they do differently?
I think people don't necessarily know when to salt or how much to salt. So I use coarse kosher salts, which I cannot say 5 times fast. It's like a tongue twister. But and I think a lot of folks end up using iodized salts, like the old school Mortons with the little girl holding salt in the sidewalks. Iodized salt has a much higher sodium level. It sounds weird, but people know what I'm talking about. It is a saltier salt.
Mhm.
If the same amount of a small amount of iodized salt, the same volume is way saltier than the same volume of a coarse kosher salt. Diamond Crystal has a much larger granule than even Morton's coarse kosher salt. And they salt in different ways. So using a coarse kosher will give you less sodium, but more of a flavor punch than a different kind of salt. However, if you're looking at something where it's not going to have a lot of time to dissolve, you probably want something like a fine sea salt, but that is saltier than an iodized salt. So you actually want to reduce the volume, then increase it. But I think it's knowing those differences between salts for home cooks, but also knowing when to salt. So something like a piece of meat and the importance of brining,
Mm.
even Even shrimp. Like shrimp don't need a long time to brine. The amount of flavor and juiciness that you get out of a shrimp if you brine it for 15 minutes is an amazing 15 hands-off 15 minutes that you could spend in the kitchen. Brining chicken, brining steak, any of these things can be brined, not just your Thanksgiving turkey, right? And brining infuses flavor. It takes you back to like high school, like concept of osmosis.
Uh-huh.
Whatever I put into this liquid is now going to infuse into literally every fiber of whatever it is I'm cooking. And you can even brine vegetables. So if you salt in the beginning, it retains the salt better than if you salt while you're cooking on meats and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But then if you're really watching sodium too, you could skip that all together and just add a little bit of salt at the very end. And then you not only get the salt enhancing other natural flavors, because that's really what salt does. It enhances other natural flavors. It brings out natural flavors from other things. But a finishing salt will also give you that crunch and texture.
Uh-huh.
And there are so many different ones out there, from smoked salts to infused salts. We've got lemon salt, rosemary salt. Could do a red sea salt. You could do a black salt from like Haleakala. There's so many different varieties. You can change a dish completely, the whole flavor profile, based on when you salt it and what type of salt you use. So having that knowledge is something that you can apply to every recipe you ever cook again, down to craft homemade mac and cheese.
I love it. And I know, I'm going to tell you that one of the things I make for people coming over lately is just a tossed green salad that I literally drizzle the spring mix with red wine vinegar and olive oil and like a little bit of balsamic and some like shaved garlic, not shaved garlic. What am I saying? Grated, like rasped garlic, kind of goes in there, goes at the bottom of the bowl, mix it all up. And then I sprinkle nice, flaky, crunchy salt on there. And I'm telling you, like the number of people who've even messaged me the next day and been like, Christine, what was in that salad? That was the best salad. And it's not all the other stuff. It is the crunchy bits of salt added at the end that they're like, this is so good.
I don't know about, I buy Maldon sea salt
Oh,
by the bucket. I have a bucket in my pantry and I refill the salt on my table in my kitchen. And this is, people make fun of me. I have a travel salt. I have a little tin that I take with me because I don't want to use a regular iodized salt shaker at restaurants. So I have a little tin that I carry in. I have one in my work bag. I have one in my purse. I have one in my car. There is Maldon flaky sea salt everywhere you go in my world. That and chapstick.
you need to market that. With the cookbook should come
Is
like
it?
your little portable salt container.
Yes, Maldon has them. They're little flighty tins. They look like
Oh,
Altoid tins.
that's
And they sell
amazing.
them in 3-packs on Amazon. Yeah, get your affiliate link now.
Have you had their smoked the Malden smoked sea salt? My former mother-in-law is from Malden. That is her hometown. So even to this day, when she comes to visit in Florida, she brings me a Malden sea salt from there. I have a little like salt piggy for it too. It's so great. It's the best.
I also love Jacobson. Like all these salts are, I don't think of them as I want one better than the other. I just think of it as they all have a different place in my chain of cooking.
Yeah, no, that makes super sense. Okay, I want to switch to another S if that's okay with you.
Sure.
We only have time for maybe one more. I'm gonna go with senses. So what do you mean by that one?
Well, we eat with our senses before we ever taste food. And the best example of this is being in a Mexican restaurant or Chili's, let's say, and a plate of fajitas goes by.
Yes.
You can hear it. You can hear the sizzle. You can smell those onions as they waft past your nose while you're walking. And every piece, your eyes, the steam, the smoke, it's colorful. I think all of this plays into how we eat. Texture, you may not be touching it with your hands, but the texture in your mouth is still there. And that to me is also touch. We call it, I don't like this word. It's called mouthfeel. But if you're in the food, I do a lot of food judging. And one of the things they say is the mouthfeel. And I'm like, that's gross. But that is what it is. It's mouthfeel. And there's other stuff that we do touch with our hands. But all of these things play into how we eat. So a lot of what I look at is, does it look pretty? Some things don't look pretty. I'm like, if you can make vegetable curry, look pretty, then it's great. So sometimes that's just adding some parsley. Like if you have, we call it
Hmm.
shades of brown. If you have shades of brown on your plate, adding a little bit of parsley and a thing of Maldon sea salt or, a grate of pepper can instantly make this look prettier. Does it smell good? Most of it smells good. We don't have to try really hard there, but are we making it look pretty? How does the mouthfeel go with taste and texture? And all of that comes into play before we ever even put a bite of food into our mouth. And that's really all it is. So one of the things I always have in my crisper is parsley.
Hmm.
Always.
Hmm.
I don't cook with it all the time. I honestly think that parsley is probably one of the most overused herbs with the least amount of flavor.
Wait, though. Wait, I'm gonna argue with you a little bit. Like I'm obsessed with Italian parsley. Like not the curly parsley. Like
No, no,
I
no, not curly parsley. No, Italian parsley.
I
I
I
think
put it in all kinds of things. I love it.
I use it a lot. Don't get me wrong. I think that there are a lot of other herbs out there that are underrated. Like I love using sage,
Mm.
tarragon. We don't see tarragon that often. And these just in the grand scheme of herbs have a bolder flavor profile
Hmm.
than
Hmm.
parsley does.
Hmm.
But I think that that's also because a lot of people don't like huge, bold flavors. But if I'm going to eat, I need it to be good. I don't want to waste my calories. I want to really amplify these things.
Hmm.
So I always have parsley in my crisper. And I know some people that have never bought fresh parsley. They've only ever used dried parsley, which
Doesn't
that
taste like
does
anything.
not have flavor.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
you'll agree with me there.
yeah,
It's
yeah, for sure.
it barely adds green. So it really doesn't serve much.
No, that makes sense. I always have parsley. I usually have cilantro and then green onions. Green onions are my like because they're actually an ingredient in the fajitas or like there's so many things that I like want them to be an ingredient of, but then I think they also do what you were saying. They're just that little like boop.
Little punch. I always have multiple onion family cousins. I also am a huge believer in shallots.
I don't. I'm not there with you on shallots. I don't know why. I find them
And
really hard to peel. I find them really hard to peel.
well, they're a pain in the butt, but I mean, so are a lot of other things. But I love leeks. I
Oh, I
use leeks
love
a lot.
leeks.
I love the flavor profile of a leek. And especially when I have somebody that's like, I have a couple of friends that don't like onions. I don't even know how I'm friends with them not liking onion. That's silly. But I can usually swap out leek and still get some oniony background flavor without it being like onion.
Yeah,
So,
no, I love leeks. I do them as just a like side vegetable, braised, like chopped up and then braised. They're so good. Love
mhm.
them. Very cool. Okay, well, Jessica, this is great. You have the other 5 S's, and your book is coming out in September, you said. So there's more there. For now, have you brought a recipe to tell us about today?
I have. So this is not a recipe that is in the book, but it is my southern salmon croquettes. And
Mm.
they sound really fancy, but they're basically just like a salmon cake. If you say croquette, all of a sudden now we're gourmet. We're elevated gourmet with salmon croquette.
That, you know what? That's one of the things I hadn't thought about this. I interviewed this guy. He's a professor at Oxford who works on this kind of food science stuff. And they did a test in cafeterias where they would name things like, so it would be like carrots versus like zesty buttered carrots or something. And they were the exact same recipe. And the amount of scoops of carrots that people like ordered as having on their cafeteria tray went up like 1,000%. Like it was just the name.
This doesn't surprise me. I mean, you know this, and I'm not sure if your readers probably don't. I was a therapist before I did all this. So I did a lot in sociology and things along those lines. And what you name something is huge. Even think about your kids, like I have small kids still. What I call something to them is very different than what I might say to an adult. And it's all about that initial presentation and how we frame it in our mind,
Mhm.
what silo it goes into. And yeah, you can say salmon cake or you can say salmon croquettes, and now you're fine.
Yeah, no,
But
there. Yeah. So what is the croquette? Is it just a cake, really?
it's just a cake. It really is just a salmon cake. And it's funny here in Maryland, we've got crab cakes, but no one would ever, gosh, you'd be like shunned if you called it a crab croquette at
Yeah.
any point in time. We're so blue collar here. But yeah, so it's really just a salmon cake. You can make it with canned salmon or fresh salmon. So it's actually very easy and accessible. And if you do it with canned salmon, obviously not as expensive,
Uh-huh.
but it has so many ways to customize it. And that's
Hmm.
what I love about this recipe. Do you want me to go through how to make it and
But
the ingredients?
in a sec, I just want to know, and maybe you're gonna tell us this, and if so, then you don't have to tell me now. If you're using fresh salmon, do you cook it first, or Okay, so you cook the salmon and then you start with it from there. Yeah, so okay, then go for where do we start when we're making these?
Yeah, and if you're using cooked salmon, you could also use leftover salmon,
Mhm.
and that plays into this flavor profile too, being able to customize it. Because if you made like I have an ancho salmon, now we've got like a spicy Southwest smoky salmon croquette,
Mhm,
salmon cake
mhm, mhm.
on our hands. But the basic here is making a binder that's gonna help it all stick together, but not be just binder. We don't want a lot of filler in there. So we use, flour, but also yellow cornmeal. It's kinda dry. It absorbs up some of the other flavors and helps it stick together, but not too much. Along with canned salmon and super, super, super minced red bell pepper. I
Mm.
like having that sweetness in there. You could also use yellow. I just don't like using green in this one. You could use yellow, you could use orange. Sweet onion, egg, and then Worcestershire sauce. I always see those memes, Christine. Have you seen those memes where like I only buy one jar of Worcestershire sauce every 15 years? And I gasp at that. I buy one every 2 weeks.
That's more than I use. You know what? I actually don't like it very much,
Really?
but I use it. It's one of those it's like the word umami, but it's one of those like if I have a sauce or a soup or something and I'm like, it's missing something. I'm either reaching for like fish sauce or Worcestershire sauce or, maybe it needs a little butter, sugar, like there's different things, but like it is one of my secret something's missing.
You don't need much. A little goes a long way. It adds a huge punch, just like huge, heady, robust punch of something that most people can't put their finger on, and that's why I think I love it. This recipe only uses 1 teaspoon
Mhm.
for 4 cakes. Like, that's not a
Yeah, yeah.
lot, but it's enough to really just take it up a notch,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Like a seasoned salt, Lowry seasoned salt, but this is another area where you can customize. If you've got another flavor of special salt that you want to use or smoked salt, you can put that in there. Ground pepper, garlic powder. I don't use fresh garlic in this one. And I don't know about you, I use a ton of garlic in everything, but
mhm.
often in my recipes, I use ground like garlic powder and fresh garlic because they do have such a different flavor
Oh, yeah.
profile and serve a different purpose. But also, I just don't want anything more wet in this one.
I feel the same way, and also in something like this, if the mixture was gonna go sit in the fridge for a while, like a while, then the fresh garlic could make sense. But if you want that flavor dispersed into every bite and you're gonna do, like, 1 clove of garlic minced, that's not gonna, like, get through everything, whereas the powder, just instant dispersal, right?
Instant dispersal. You were 100% right. Mayonnaise, and this one actually is cilantro.
Mm,
I love cilantro. You like cilantro, but there are a lot of people out there that are anti cilantro, and that is fine. You can use any fresh herb you want in this one. So you take it to a tarragon, and now you've almost got like a French salmon croquette.
mhm, mhm,
You want to do the cilantro, and we can go more of that Southwest flavor, but really you can take any kind of dried spice and add a little bit to this. You could do an ancho chili powder. You could do a smoked paprika. You could really play with that.
mhm,
And
mhm,
that's also going to play into what kind of sauce we use because, of course, I use a sauce. So, really, all of this stuff just goes together in a bowl.
mhm,
You form it into 6 to 8 little patties, cakes, if you will. You can do them even smaller and do them in balls, like crab balls, like an appetizer type
mm,
portion, or
mhm,
larger ones where you do more closer to 6. It's really up to you. You don't have to put it in the fridge to help it congeal a little bit, but I feel like that helps. It's something that I like to make ahead of time, and I feel like it does help. It lets that cornmeal really
mhm,
absorb
mhm,
and disperse all the flavors throughout it. And then you just quickly pan fry them. So you can make this whole mixture ahead of time. You can make the balls or the cakes ahead of time. You can also freeze them.
mm,
And since the salmon's already cooked, really you just have to pull them out frozen like a frozen burger patty, flip them in a skillet a few times, and they're done. So
mhm,
you can make a huge batch ahead of time and just keep them in the freezer. My kids love these. Take one out when you need it for a quick dinner
mhm,
and make it and go. Now you could also make it fancy. We've got a bed of arugula. We've got some maybe fresh lemon zest on top, or let's do a garlic aioli, or top it with even a balsamic reduction or something. Sprinkle of that fresh parsley and sea salt, and now we have a high end lunch salad, you know, or we could pair it with a steak and do a steak and take it, surf and turf steak and cake
mm,
that's a little bit different. So these they're so versatile,
mhm,
but they're
mhm.
so easy. They feel fancy because they're seafood, but if you're doing the canned salmon, it's not going to break the bank at all. It's just one of my overall favorite recipes And it's one of my go-tos because it's so simple.
I love it, and I am going to try it. It sounds perfect. Can you tell people, is this recipe on your site, Jessica?
Yeah. Savoryexperiments.com. Look up salmon croquettes or salmon cakes. It'll
Okay.
come up in the little search box there.
And I'll put the link in the show notes. And actually, so also let people know if they want to find you, maybe get updates about your cookbook and see what you're up to, where is the best place for them to go?
Instagram or Facebook, Savory Experiments or Jessica Formicola. Either one will pop it up.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Thank you for having me.
No one can make a fish cake sound better than Jessica can. Salmon croquettes. I love that. And just changing the name of things makes such a difference. And I hope you got lots of great ideas for adding that little bit of something special to your dinners. Go and find Jessica online, Savory Experiments. You are going to love the things that she comes up with all the time. Delicious. Speaking of delicious, there are delicious things happening in my kitchen this week. I'm really excited to tell you about the first one. So you probably know that my mom's side of the family is Ukrainian and that my parents had Ukrainian restaurants when I was growing up. But none of those recipes, or very few of them, have made their way onto my websites. These are things that I've been cooking and eating my whole life. I think sometimes they seem a little complicated and I wasn't sure how to share them. In some cases, they're like my mom's very special recipes and I wasn't sure if I wanted to make them public, but I am doing it now. So I've already tested, photographed, and videoed the pierogi and cabbage roll recipes, and those are going live on the site later this month. I am so excited about that. And then I'm testing a bunch of other things. So on my testing plate this week is that classic Ukrainian chicken Kiev, so buttery and delicious. So I'm doing a round of testing on that this week. I haven't made it in a long time, so I just kind of wanted to dive in, play, try a few things. So that's happening. And while doing that, I'm also going to be doing some videos and pictures of how to butterfly chicken breasts because I know it's not a skill that everybody has or knows how to do. So I am adding that to kind of the like knife skills, skill set sort of thing over on the Cookful. So I'm doing that this week as well. As to what is going live on the websites this week, more knife skills, cutting your own lamb chops from like a rack of lamb. So I am going to have that going up live on Cook the Story this week. It is my favorite way to get lamb rib chops is from a rack and you cut them yourself. So that is going live. And then on the Cookful, super easy dinner idea tied to what I was talking about at the beginning of this show, how convenient, I did not plan this, is my favorite taco bowl recipe. This is one I make all the time. It is very, very simple, but very delicious. Comes together very quickly. And I tend to have the ingredients most of the time. It's like tomatoes, lettuce, green onions, cheddar cheese, sour cream, tortilla chips, little rice, little ground beef with some nice seasoning. And we have a really tasty dinner that everybody really loves. So that recipe is going live on the Cookful this week. As to what I am telling you about on this podcast this week, so many tasty recipes. And you guessed it, the taco bowls are one of them. That is one of the recipes that I am telling you about. Also, cooking chicken breasts straight from frozen, a Greek chicken marinade that I am so obsessed with. Ooh, and there's a chimichurri steak. So much flavor in that recipe. You are going to love it. So make sure you are subscribed to the podcast and you are getting all of these recipes every single day. The easiest way to do that is to go on your phone, go to your favorite podcast app and search for recipe of the day. You will find me there or go to cookthestory.com/ROTD and you can subscribe directly from there. And that is also where you can find all of the links to things that I've talked about today. If you go down to the March 1st episode from 2025, that is today, and click on that, you will get all of the information from today's episode. It's also in the show notes for the podcast if you have an app that has show notes showing. I want to say a huge thank you to Jessica from SavoryExperiments.com for being an amazing guest and sharing that tasty salmon croquette recipe with us. Thank you, Jess. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.